Okay, welcome everybody to the February 4th iteration of the MicroProfile live Hangout. Oops, did a link to the meeting notes should be in the chat, but they're not. So if someone could paste that, that would be awesome. It is everyone's shared responsibility to take notes. Reminder, it's everyone's shared responsibility to take notes. This meeting is being recorded along with the chat. So I am going to share my screen here. And go to, all right, sorry here. I am now on Catalina. I upgraded finally, so hopefully I can do this as all the permissions work. I tried to set this up ahead of time. All right, everyone see the browser?
Yep.
All right, nothing compromising? No work links? Okay, all right, excellent. So scroll down here, starting where we normally start. I think Edwin is still, outnumbered at home. So with the young one, so I will just kind of give everyone a heads up that I'm going to be working on a candidate release probably sometime this week for the MicroProfile platform release. Thanks, Emily, again for reminding me again about the CQs. Clearly defined as a way to go and check dependencies. So awesome. And are there, oh, I didn't put anything there about MicroProfile 4.0. Does anyone have any comments about MicroProfile 4.0? We kind of punted a little bit, I think, this week, this last week.
I have a quick, can I say something quickly about MicroProfile 3.3? So, so John, you are going to create the release candidate this week. So do you require the included spec to do a final release today or tomorrow?
No, I've even in the past pointed to candidate releases. So
no, what I mean is like a final release. Because at the moment, I am ready to do final release for tolerance config. I think it's health and the metrics property. Yeah, all need unrest client. We all need to do a final release. Do you require we do a final release before you do a RC1?
Not necessarily, no.
So
I can point to the RC releases in the RC release of the platform.
Yep.
Okay, so we can go ahead to do our final release. You don't have any outstanding work for us, right? So I plan to do final release soon for the specs. What's the deadline? Basically, what I'm trying to say is what's the kind of deadline for the sub-spec to do the final release?
No, I thought I added it in the MicroProfile calendar. If not, it should be there.
I thought we'd said February 5th before.
Yeah, February 5th, and the 18th is we normally tack on 2 weeks, or at least a week, but hopefully 2 weeks to, for the platform release.
So that means today is the day we need to do the final release.
Well, technically tomorrow. If it's
fifth,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can't remember 4th or 5th. Okay, so that's
yeah.
cool.
Sincere apologies if I don't have that in the MicroProfile calendar. That should be.
Yeah, I don't see anything there, John. That's what I was just looking for.
Yep.
Right.
So that will be added to the MicroProfile
Oh,
calendar.
actually, sorry. I'm just looking at I searched for February. It says February 11 component releases due.
Okay.
No, I think I'm getting February 5th confused. We've got a date for internally. It's the 5th, but 11th is
okay. 11th and then the 18th.
Yes,
so
if you search for Feb space 11, you'll see that somewhere way down in the notes.
Right. Okay. Just before the 11th, if some spec are confident. Okay. If some spec are confident to do final, so they can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're pretty close on metrics. We'll probably have tomorrow.
Okay. I plan to do the final release tomorrow as well, so that we can plan for the next release.
I have a question about this, about the release they were pushing for February. Do we think it's going to be ready by DevNexus? Right now we have JFocus this week, and the next one, the big one, and also FOSDEM. And the next one is DevNexus. It usually matches with our release, and that happens on the 19th. 18th, if we talk about workshops, would it be okay for us to push it via media, and not only media, but actually during the conference? Because DevNexus has a section for open source through the area booth. Eclipse has a booth, but we're not talking about this. We're talking about a focus on the project itself and the latest release. And many of us will be there.
I think we released like 18th, and DevNexus is a good timing, like to say MicroProfile 3.3 is out.
We planned that, right?
Yeah, we planned it super right from the start. When we
Okay.
we planned it from the start when we chose the dates back when.
Yep.
And thankfully, DevNexus have gone back to February, which is awesome. So I'm just pointing out what will be there. So let's blog. I'm not throwing that. I'm just saying let's blog those ones that are involved in the releases, because we can all push it through the media that I'm talking about. MicroProfile, all of it is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we have Cesar on the call as well?
Let's see. No, we do not. But one Git ticket is enough. It's not about one blog in that side pushing it. It's about having the documentation and submitting the Git, and it gets all approved. It's just and then push through the media.
Yep.
Cesar is not the one to do it all. Everyone helps.
We have tweets lined up?
Yeah. We have tweets as scheduled, but not blogs, and nothing about the release yet. And I have continued to say that one blog about one release is not enough. Even if it's a minor release, we should feed the contributors that are potentially thinking about contributing to MicroProfile, and the users that are new to MicroProfile, to consume the data in small amounts, not a big bomb. That is too much. But
who's cutting this release? Is this the one that Edwin's been working on?
Yes.
Well, so it'll probably end up being me cutting it, or at least, well, the reason is he's out right on.
Right, yeah, he's got his release.
His release.
He has streams. He's working in.
Yeah. So I'll work on cutting this release.
Okay.
So just wondering, is anyone interested to do a tech talk on this release end of February?
I think we should give it to Edwin and John.
Well, Edwin's going to be super busy. I mean, so.
Yeah, Edwin is out of pocket, I think.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm just throwing an idea.
I think it's a good idea. If someone
it's
wants
a good idea,
to do it.
but do we have enough features across the updated specs?
John, the question.
You don't necessarily have to do just the 3.3 release. You can say this is the last one and the next one's 4, and here's what 4 could be.
Yeah, we could do that.
5 minutes.
That's no problem.
Yeah. There we go. John, I will add it to the marketing side, and we will add a Git ticket assigned to you so that there is transparency on this. So that, that means
Okie dokie.
A ticket is created and we push it via MicroProfile Media.
And I'll put it in the chat here, just the, John, if you want to do a sign up.
Yeah, you have the spreadsheet sign up, right?
Yeah,
Somewhere?
yeah. I put it in the chat.
Tanya, can you put it in the minutes under marketing? And
oh, absolutely. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a scale. Let's do this. And thank you so much. I'm sorry I went back, but this is about the push and this release, and it matters that we are smart about the distribution beyond 18.
And then assign it to me in Google in the Google Doc.
Yep. That's awesome. Going back to mute with coffee.
With coffee. That's dangerous.
I need
Okay, so that's MicroProfile 3.3, and I apologize. I forgot to also, I was doing this morning and I didn't copy over the MicroProfile 4 content to this release from last week. So I will do that now. I'll fix that a little bit later. So again, the plan is to base this release on the Jakarta EE8 APIs. We know that it's probably going to be cutting it close to any Jakarta EE9. We have bounced around various ideas about how to deal with potentially 2 major releases for MicroProfile in a short period of time. One to adopt the Jakarta APIs, Jakarta EE8 most likely, and then probably not too long after that, a release that would support Jakarta EE9. So again, I don't know if we need to cover that right now, but it is more food for thought to have in the group, Google group chat.
The other thing is for the Java 11, like the MicroProfile compile APIs compile with Java 11 at Java 11. Do we want to do that separately, or we wait for consuming Jakarta EE9?
Yeah, that was also my proposal. I put it in the agenda regarding JDK 11 that we make at least some advancements, and that we say that MicroProfile 4 implementations need to run on JDK 11, optionally on 8, but required on JDK 11. The ones that we have now already for 3.3, the 3.2 do already run on 11, so putting that requirement should be no great obstacle, and then we can prove that we are looking to the future.
Yeah, this is running on Java 11. So what I'm saying is the other related, but it's not exactly same. So basically compile MicroProfile APIs at Java 11. At the moment, all the APIs compiled at Java 8. So basically change the compile level to be Java 11.
Yeah, but then you rule out everyone which is working on 8, and I think we should make this leap to JDK 11 in 2 steps. First, that it runs, and then the second one, maybe next year, that we drop JDK 8 support.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Emily, the one, maybe this helps, but with Jakarta EE9, we are going to keep the APIs at a Java SE8 level. So I don't see the push for MicroProfile to jump ahead of that.
I thought the Java Jakarta EE9 is kind of must on Java 11.
The testing.
And optionally.
Only run on 11.
Right.
Running
the
on
testing.
11.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So I would propose the same thing for MicroProfile. And since, as I mentioned, we have already achieved that state, that should be not a big issue, if you ask me.
Right. So it's not an option anymore. It's kind of changed to be like a must.
So decision, it sounds like MicroProfile 4 must support both JDK 8 and JDK 11.
+1. I think we discussed this before. And we always go back and ask the same question, which is great. But I think we should just commit to it and add it to the calendar for the 4.0 release. Like as a major, we always add to the calendar what is coming, and it should be stated there under the subject, so we don't forget, and everyone knows. Also, John, can you make the font bigger or make the?
Yes, I apologize. I normally do that. All right, for both JDK 8 and JDK 11. We normally bold our decisions. Okay, specs with breaking changes. Let's see. Okay, so then we have the list of specs, which you can hopefully see on the screen. These are feature breaking changes, not just package naming. Actually, no, this doesn't have package breaking changes. Namespace, I meant. So, any modifications of this list planned?
No, I'll just put in my 2 cents worth, John, that I still think it's better to keep these two things separate. So I know that there's been some discussion about, okay, should we just wait for Jakarta EE9? And I think MicroProfile has to make the move to Jakarta EE8 in a separate release for moving to Jakarta EE9.
And I do not know, Kevin, but I agree with you completely.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of inherent in this one right here, right? But that's how I read it.
Oh, I think they're related, but they're still separate topics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. However, I think we mentioned earlier, like MicroProfile 4 is consuming Jakarta E8. I think earlier we said maybe it's like a MicroProfile 5 or something. We'll do another release. I think we are in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we took. That's the meeting notes that we have here. What I should have done, and again, it's everyone's shared responsibility, so it's not entirely on me. Okay, here we go. I'll just put it this way. E-base on Jakarta E8. Okay. We got about 10 more minutes. Let's see. We got a few miscellaneous things in marketing. We haven't heard a marketing update in a while, and since we're a little bit light on the agenda, beyond the MicroProfile 3.3 that we just talked about, are there any other marketing updates?
I will just update on the side that please make sure that if you are attending MicroProfile, attending events, submit tickets, the GIT tickets, so that we can push that. We're pretty organized this year after putting into effect the GIT for marketing, so that if any session is not submitted via GIT, it doesn't get branding. That means media push. Anyone globally can do so. It doesn't have to be attending this call. It will get done, but it requires an action in tracing. The second thing is that all of it is here. You have the inventory and the GIT of what currently is, and the Hangout minutes. It's pretty basic. One of the major things that have been happening is with the startup, and that update is onto Cesar, but he's not in this call. So there is a blog, so read about it. And what else? I mean, if we go to miscellaneous, you can see exactly what's what. There is an inventory of what happens on the GIT, and then the call goes on. I'm not able to join those calls, but Ryan is, and they are very, very, very disciplined. We have a lot of tickets. This is done with that side. I want to go into miscellaneous that are in the agenda and point out that we have 2 new committers. That brings, John, can you go back to the main thing? And I think this is important as a part of the branding in the community. You go back into the agenda of the Hangout. There. So we have 2 new committers, Lard and Michael. And that brings it to 57. And I think this is something huge for the project itself. It's healthy. Well, there are some committers that have been dormant, and it's okay. Only one is history only because of paperwork, but that can be repaired as soon as John Ament gets his stuff together. Other than that, congratulations to the project itself for not only recognizing those doers, but also pushing for the votes. I think this is important, and it's something that is worthy of mention in this call, not as marketing, but as a project itself. That's it from my side.
Awesome. Thank you, Amelia. And yes, congratulations to the new committers. That is literally awesome. I added an item just to point to a use case discussion in the in the Google group. We don't have to necessarily discuss it in detail here, but the idea is to create use cases behind, validating the features that we want to add to various specs. And actually, so write up the use cases and maybe even provide a little bit of data behind market data behind the use case, such that we aren't innovating in the spec itself, right? That there's actually some level of maturity and usage in the wild before we try and write a spec on it. Just a discussion. I think it's an interesting discussion. So.
Do you mean that users will write the case studies, or do we mean the contributors will write the case study? There is
no, not case study, use cases.
Use cases.
So requirements behind the specs.
Okay, so let me add something here. When we were writing the white paper with Lars and a few like Lightband and Cumulutsu, they got 2 pages or 4 pages total. We discovered that one of the partners has major data that we could use, not only for use cases, but we can start with that. And they have factual stats from what they see their clients and how they use different APIs for MicroProfile. Should we do this? Thank you for adding that. I think we can start not only with the technical side, but also bring them back into the conversation, because they are ready to write up as much or as little as possible. Mm-hmm. And they have the data, they're just waiting for us.
So just add some comments to the Google group thread. To me, this is a pretty interesting one, being a PM, product manager. So just point them to that thread and let's have the conversation. Again, we like to be light on process, so
yes.
We don't want to do something overbearing in any way. But it's having the conversation.
Yeah, if it's not scalable, it's not going to get executed. The link enables all of us to send it to a few partners that we know will be interested, and we go forward. There will be no issues. It's super quick execution. Anything that is added debt will not be executed. That is the model of MicroProfile. John, that is awesome. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, it was actually David Lloyd that started the conversation, so discussion.
Thanks, David.
Let's see here. Rudy, let's see, how are we doing on time? We got about 5 minutes before we switch the discussion here. Rudy, do you want to cover this bullet that you've added?
Yes. Historically, the starter project was as part of this group, as within the MicroProfile GitHub repositories. But actually it is a tool, not a specification. And now that we are moving to that working group, that doesn't belong here anymore, I guess. There are now also other tools available, which are more or less all grouped in that MicroShed repository. So my proposal is to move that starter out of the Eclipse projects and to the rest of the tools where it better belongs.
Yeah, just a bit of a reminder on that one. I think a lot of the reason why we wanted to move that out of the official Eclipse, MicroProfile repo, I should say, it isn't because it's not valuable work. It absolutely is. It's just that we don't want people to think that we have standard tools, and then they kind of said, I'd rather contribute in some other way. It's so we get more people creating tools. We don't want them to think there's an official set of tools and then kind of negatively impact innovation around MicroProfile tooling. So that was kind of the background behind why we did that. Let's see here. We are now at the working group discussion, so we got here a little early. Sorry, I see some people are chatting. I'm gonna double check the chat.
So,
okay.
Sorry, John, is it then okay that we start moving it out, or is there any objection? Or because I didn't hear anyone, neither a yes or a no, so.
I think as yes, the constant pros. I think he has do we need to leave for a few days so for further discussion, or what are other people think?
I apologize. For some reason I thought that this line item was to actually do the move, so
Yeah,
didn't mean to jump the gun.
yeah, from the marketing point of view, one thing is that I think a MicroProfile starter lives in like a MicroProfile is kind of quite nicely like a link with a MicroProfile. From marketing point of view, we have like an end-to-end kind of story. But I don't have any, I mean, I'm not against any moving or no moving. I just want to see what other people think.
Give me 30 seconds. The thing that Emily pointed out is that currently the startup is added in 2 places on the website as a single tab for those that want to test any single implementation by vendors, and also under resources. What worries me about moving anything from what currently is that there would be too many sources of truth. We have said from the start, 3 years ago, almost 4, that we want the website to bring anyone, users and contributors, to know exactly what's what. We continue to move things, even if it's a spec. Like, what does it mean? Do we have it? Is it different than that project itself? I mean, right now we have it as something that you go and try stuff. It's not really a project. It's just.
I think Kevin was trying to get some words in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think the proposal is to move it away from the MicroProfile.io site. It's just the repository. So right now they're using the sandbox repository to develop code. And because of past discussions related to tooling, it doesn't look like it would be accepted as a first-class citizen of the MicroProfile. So they're suggesting, well, maybe we should move it outside of the MicroProfile just as a source repository location, and the results of it would still be hosted on MicroProfile.io.
Right. If it hold on, we do have other infrastructure sites like the code that hosts the code that grabs all the README files from all the different repos and mashes it all together to be one big site, and then runs MicroProfile.io, not starter.microprofile.io, but MicroProfile/projects. That's also infrastructure code that we own. We don't work on it aggressively, but it's still code we own. I view the starter as kind of in the same category. It's infrastructure. It's not a spec. Currently, that MicroProfile code that runs the site is actually in github.com/microprofile/. And it isn't officially a repo. And I actually think that that's maybe a bad idea, because it probably should be under the Eclipse org somewhere in GitHub versus where it's sitting now, kind of being this unofficial thing. But whatever we do with that, we should do the same thing with starter. They should be consistent.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. By the way, the MicroProfile starter is not in Sandbox. It's in the MicroProfile-starter. So it has, it has a dedicated repo.
Yeah, we created a repo for that last year.
Yes.
And
we did.
that was about the time that Rudy became a committer.
Yeah.
And we started that repo off, made him a committer, and then he started working on it.
So then let's fix both things about infra. Let's start.
I wanted to hear some more thoughts before you talk again. Kevin, I don't know if anything I said changed your perspective or added to it, or
no. So that does help. I did not realize that it had moved out of Sandbox. I guess I was thinking of something else, probably the testing stuff that Andy had been doing. So, if it's already in its own repo, and we kind of treat it like the infrastructure type stuff for the website, I guess I don't see a reason to move it outside of its current location. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I think is as long as we don't treat this as a spec, basically it's use all the kind of rules we like place on top of the spec. I think give it more freedom to evolve and etc. It should be fine.
What will be the benefit of moving it from the current location to another place?
So it gets back. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yes. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was just going to say the original discussion was to have the MicroProfile repos focus on specs, not necessarily on implementations of things or tooling, because we wanted, especially around tooling, we didn't want there to be a perception that it's a problem solved and let's just go off and do something else. We wanted to encourage innovation around tooling, and by putting the starter there. All right. So
I got him.
Thank you.
I got him.
That was Larry.
Yeah. Okay, so it was about setting a precedent, right? You know, then maybe the next tool goes in, then maybe the next tool goes in, right? And we're just afraid of having official MicroProfile tooling out of the MicroProfile committee.
Right. But maybe the correct perspective is it's not tooling, it's infrastructure, right? Which is a different deal. Because like infrastructure runs MicroProfile itself and enables us to make specifications. Tooling is really like on top of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Tooling is Zoom, and that is not a startup.
No, that's infrastructure too.
I'm going to bring up the working group in two contexts. First of all, I think that this may be impacted by the working group discussion. So meaning that if, you know, depending on how we approach the working group, it may mean that we have to put things in different projects or who knows what, right? So it's a conversation that's in progress. So I'm okay leaving it where it's at, maybe until we discuss this more. And in my opinion, maybe even wait for a working group decision. And maybe that influences what we do. That's just my opinion. But I am going to recommend that we continue this discussion. And sorry, Rudy, in the Google group, and switch the conversation over to the working group discussion.
Yep. Just so everyone's aware, I pasted a couple of our infrastructure repos. So if anything, we could make them consistent, but I agree that's, you know, not really a problem. So
can you add those links to the miscellaneous so that it's part of the conversation in the session?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, it'd be great to put them in the meeting minutes.
I'm telling David, not you, John. He's helping on
I already said sure. Let's go ahead, John, with the next call.
Okay. All right. Getting to the working group discussion. And I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour today, just an FYI. So I can't go long. Let's see. And I just thought about something here. I'm checking. I'm really hoping I hit start record. I'm trying to figure out how to find out.
Yeah,
I did?
It
Okay.
says you're recording.
All right, thank you. I just realized, because when I exit, I'm probably going to have to stop the recording, right? Even if you guys continue on. So, all right. So where we talked about last week, where the conversation went, was into long-term releases, maybe taking that approach, because we decided that maybe we should focus on some of the issues that people wanted to deal. Let's see, there were some assumptions that might have been kind of incorrect assumptions about what this really meant, and maybe we should actually have the technical discussion first. We got, I think, a little bit sidetracked about what is a standard, what isn't a standard. It's a good philosophical discussion, but the conversation turned into maybe we start doing LTS releases, right, as a way to provide some level of stability so that specs could potentially be consumed by, you know, those outside MicroProfile looking for stability like Jakarta. So I'll leave it at that. As kind of what I think the summary is from this discussion last week, and see what and then Emily, there was a discussion going on, continuing that discussion in the Google group, where we're kind of going back and forth a little bit. Do you want to cover that? About an idea you had?
Oh yeah. So it's the long-term support discussion. Yeah, is basically this is the kind of I got inspiration from David's a PR, like a MicroProfile becomes standards initiative. So I came up with the idea of the long-term support. Basically, for example, like MicroProfile config is being around for like 3 years. I mean, some APIs is stable, and maybe it's like in the next June release, we probably revisit all the like API, SPI, and etc. And then we could declare as a long-term support, so that this release of the MicroProfile config like 2.0 can be adopted by Jakarta EE. So like Jakarta G NoSQL can adopt it. However, like if we declare as long-term support, we basically lock all the like the APIs. So these APIs will not be removed or updated. We kind of okay to add any additional stuff and etc. However, is like we cannot break backward compatibility. And then is with that, like we could like introduce a model like every 18 months, and we can do a long-term support. So within this 18 months, and config is free to release any like releases and etc. Free to introduce any backward incompatible changes within this time frame. And then when it comes to another long-term release, again, is kind of revisit all the changes that has been done in the past 18 months and then lock down the version. So that's the kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my question there is, it sounds like you can make backwards incompatible changes every 18 months. And then how does that help Jakarta EE, which doesn't make backwards incompatible changes at all? Is that what it's designed for?
No, it's for this like 18 months. You can only make a backward compatibles for the APIs you recently introduced. Like, okay, I have declared a long-term release like in June's time, and then like in October, I add another API. And then I figured out that's rubbish. Is I don't really mean to add that API. I can free delete that API. And then like in 18 months time, then like I do a config like 5.0. In this time frame, like in the config for 5.0, it should have all the APIs inherited from config 3.0. And then have some additional like APIs and etc. So it's basically like this config release between the long-term release, they're all backward compatible. But in the interim, it's not.
Okay, so the idea is a spec makes a backwards compatible, we'll call it long-term release, and that long-term is forever.
True.
And then there's a period of 18 months where it can still make crazy guesses and add new things and change those new things as much as it wants for 18 months. At the end of 18 months, it has to decide what's permanent and what's not.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, this is too finite.
Hold on. So right now, so first of all, I think there's some interesting thoughts to that. That's a really interesting thing because it does potentially provide us a way to still guess and be crazy and rewrite stuff. and then obviously on the Jakarta side of the fence, we could only use the stable versions.
Yeah.
And Linux does this. So like I can't remember which one it is. Even numbers are unstable and odd numbers are stable or something like that. I don't remember what the pattern is, but thanks. Anyway, then the trick is this. Or maybe it's not a trick. Right now, we are currently shipping in our platforms MicroProfile and Jakarta E at the same time for most of us. Now, there are some exceptions, Quarkus, Helidon, Cumulus, but most of us have our full Jakarta platforms and on our full MicroProfile implementations together. So what does that mean for me if I'm supporting like version X of Jakarta and it says our version of config is 2.0, and then I want to support the latest MicroProfile release and it says that version is config 3.0, which is changeable. How do I handle that?
Well, I see it a lot of the way that we handle the JDK, right? So we don't necessarily try and target, even ourselves, we didn't try and target JDK 9 or 10 in Jakarta, right? So it does let developers go out and play. It does let Quarkus or Helidon or whoever else, right, Cumulus go out and play with the new interim versions. But the stable release, the thing that we might want to put in this stable products would be the LTS releases. That's how I parsed what Emily was kind of proposing, and I agree it's a good discussion to have.
Bill, you go ahead and talk, and I think you got some valuable things to say on this topic as well.
Yeah, so I there's some interesting ideas here for sure, but the problem is, so you have some APIs that are stable and some APIs that aren't stable. How do you tell the difference?
That's a big question in my mind.
And would you not just do something like the JDK does and put the not yet stable APIs into an incubating package? So by the package name, you know that they're not stable, and then you move them to a more final package name once they've gotten past their 18 months gestation period.
Yeah, I thought exactly the similar idea, like differentiate by using package names.
Right. Which brings us back to the beginning where I was saying the whole point of MicroProfile was to experiment, and when we make things stable, we change the package. That new package is JavaX in the JCP, but that's not anything anymore. Wouldn't the new package could just be Jakarta? And we're right back at the beginning, and the original plan makes sense.
Right, exactly. The Oregon Eclipse MicroProfile is the incubating package, and Jakarta .whatever is the stable package.
Right.
However, is like one thing is existing like MicroProfile customers, they don't need to like change like the package with this model. And for any,
so let's talk about that. So let's fairly address that. So when, for example, Hibernate helped make the JPA spec, that involved a package name, but it didn't break all the existing Hibernate users. You could continue to support the existing Hibernate APIs while also supporting now the new stable APIs. And as a customer, you choose. Right? And so couldn't we do that?
So it's for this one, like if we change the MicroProfile to be Jakarta, are we going to move the whole thing to Jakarta? I mean, basically kill the MicroProfiles like a repository.
Yeah,
that's to me is kind of the bigger chunk of work, and it's kind of the two different places. And what after we have done that, what about what about the future releases? And if we move to Jakarta, and then again we need to add more things.
That was a lot of questions. Can we do by them one at a time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for me, if you say, then you have the incubating package and the stable package, that means that you need to make a fork of the repository. So config will be forked into Jakarta with a new package name. So that doesn't mean that you cannot evolve it anymore with the MicroProfile, because it is just a branch. It is split off.
The thing is, if we have in two different places, and then it's kind of we donate something to Jakarta and then continue involve in MicroProfile. Eventually, MicroProfile is just seen as another kind of a prototype, as we see it. So I think as a devalue MicroProfile.
Like, isn't the focus of what we're trying to do is like all this cloud native stuff is happening and the pace of innovation is so incredible. We can't confidently come up with a standard that's perfect on the first try. And if we do, we end up so far behind the market. And we've always discussed that standards shouldn't innovate. They should standardize what's proven to work. And so the MicroProfile package is our place to, like, as fast as we can, throw ideas at the market at problems and find the ones that work. And then when we do, standardize them. We just haven't ever gotten to that last part yet.
So I think there's a 3-tier model. And this kind of gets into the prior discussion in the Google group I mentioned. There's innovating in open source or wherever, right? There's just people working on frameworks. That's tier 1, right? It's super fast moving and changes a lot. Tier 2 is we try and assuming there's market usage of some of these things, we could try and create a spec around it. And in the quick, rapid spec approach, tier 3 would then be the stable releases. Sorry, Bill, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I had to drop off for a minute to take another phone call, but I want to get in 2 points. First is, I think that if you go with this approach of basically experimenting in org.eclipse.microprofile and moving it to Jakarta once it's stable, I don't think you want to continue evolving that same API under org.eclipse.microprofile. That would just be too confusing, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. I think there was general agreement on that. The other point I wanted to bring up was that to the extent that we have this package renaming stuff working for compatibility from Java X to Jakarta, you could also use that for compatibility between existing stable org.eclipse.microprofile APIs and new Jakarta versions of those same APIs.
I've had that thought many times as well. And I think that maybe once people see that work, they'll be a little bit less nervous about a package change. But everything we're doing points us in the direction where we're going to have to deal with a package change at a massive scale affecting 20 years of code. So I'm not so intimidated by the org eclipse microprofile package name to the Jakarta profile package, to the Jakarta package, because we have this problem already. And the benefit to a user is that I don't have to go look up any documentation. I don't have to go, is this org eclipse microprofile foo a stable one or an unstable one? And does everybody in my team understand the difference? And do they have miscommunication even amongst themselves about which one is which? And then if we add the LTS complication on top of that, then I got to be confident that if I want to say only use the stable stuff, I got to be confident all my team has fully understood that that one is stable, but that version is not stable, and you can't use that one because I only want us to using the stable ones. And I don't really, with my executive hat on, I don't really feel that my team would understand that.
So I had a couple of questions.
As a customer, as a consumer, right?
One is, so the model that you're discussing is basically when a spec is mature, it's mature, period. Right? At that point, we don't need to innovate around that spec. I'm not sure I agree with that approach.
Yeah, I think that's drawing too hard a line there.
Okay.
I think there may be, and there's some tricky technical parts to this, but there may be ways where there's a part of a spec that you need to experiment with, and you can effectively do that in a different package namespace, and then be able to move it back to the standards namespace once you're sure it's okay. Sometimes that will work and is a reasonable approach. There will be places where that doesn't really work, and then you're stuck with how to effectively do the experimentation that you need to do without disrupting the stability of the current package.
Right. Like say, for example, CDI was MicroProfile and moved over, but we have all these CDI related concepts that we think are really innovative. But we have no idea if they're going to work. So we want to try a bunch of them out, like a cloud scope, just random idea, right? You know, it's a CDI scope, but it's for your cloud native stuff, and it says I got one of these per cloud. Okay, whatever. We can try it out, and if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, we ditch it, we change it, we reinvent it. We think we got really close, but we can do all that under the MicroProfile package, even though it's maybe thought of as something that's CDI. And if we like it and we think it's stable after a couple of years, we can just move it in and say that, you know, we want to build a bunch of specs on it over on the Jakarta side of the fence. So let's move it over.
Kind of what REST client is.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of one of the examples that I would say is that like the rightful home of REST client is the JAX-RS spec. So if it were to graduate, it would probably go there.
No, the only reason I said I'm not saying don't move it to Jakarta or anything. The reason I say no is because I think it's big enough to be in its own spec. I just worry that we've got too many interdependencies in specs already that we're trying to break.
Yeah.
So I would want to keep things a little bit more granular.
Sure.
So,
yeah, but look at what happened to JAX-WS. JAX-WS is really one spec that's spread over 5 specs or something ridiculous like that. Having it spread across all those different specs did not make anything easier for anybody.
So one thing that no one is realizing is, and it makes me nervous on how we talk about maturity, and it seems finite, and then move it into Jakarta. I don't care about the names, right? Let's say Jakarta for now. The thing is that the committers, currently 57, won't have access, should we decide at a later time to adjust anything. The playground of having 2 different sources on doing stuff and innovation being limited once it's transferred, should we decide to do so, seems like a double kill on what means for MicroProfile to welcome that new coder out of college or during college. We have Martin, we have a few others. They have written thesis on how easy it is to play around.
Yeah.
So
hold on.
I'm confused.
Yeah, but I think that's already, if I got 5 minutes, I'll just be super short. I think that's already taken care of, right? Because when we accepted JNoSQL as a project that would be we took all the committers. They're there. Right? So if something graduates and it's got a bunch of committers associated with it, they go with it.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you take an existing spec and merge it, like if you take the REST client and merge it with JAX-RS, I would expect a bunch of those committers to be added to that existing Jakarta project as well.
Well, if that is taken care of, that is one thing. But then how do we explain to the clients we support, they use different APIs, about the move? I mean,
we would use the Hibernate JPA example, and people should understand that. And if they don't, then, well, they should understand it.
Yeah, and the same thing's happening in the JDK. This is hopefully well understood, but yes, you are going to need to explain it probably more than once to a lot of people.
And it needs to be constant. And Bill, it's a pleasure to have you here. You should join more often so we can tackle you in that side of the fence, since, you know, we have 4
minutes left, and we've heard a lot of me, you, and Bill, and I kind of want to make sure that, like, We hear from Ken Finnegan. We hear from Kevin. We hear from you, John. Scott.
I've been talking.
Scott, do you have thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a concept I'd floated before, so I mean, I think it's a natural adoption. There are details like we're talking about in terms of, I don't see a problem necessarily with keeping the evolution going. I mean, it's just a fork, which is you can always do. I mean, it's just the way open source works. So, you know, if the same community and committer set is working in both Jakarta and MicroProfile, that's their choice. You know, if you still want to try out crazy stuff or looking at a version 2.0 that ultimately would replace what just got moved in Jakarta in the next major release, I don't see a problem with that. It's just logistics and management details. I mean, it's up to them, frankly.
Rudy, you had some thoughts on this. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, for me, it's also natural that it keeps evolving, just as Hibernate keeps evolving separately from GPA. So it is not that because it is standardized that the innovation stops around config, for example. And at a later point, there can always things added back to the stable version, let's call it the Jakarta version.
I think.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Emily.
Maybe we are trying to see the same thing anyway, Kevin. I see. Okay. So I thought if we move, we will stop MicroProfile repository. We will continue on the Jakarta side. I think if we go backwards and forwards, I think this is kind of introduce a lot of confusion. The other thought I have is who will trigger like which spec to move and when to move for what kind of benefit. I can only see if MicroProfile spec is like heavily needed by the Jakarta EE spec. Yeah, that's kind of one of the requirements for it to move. And however, who will trigger this move and what kind of process and etc. I think it's like a Q1 spec and then stand out another one. I feel like we do a package like a rename, that's kind of one-off. If we constantly do package rename, I think we have to ask ourselves, is that necessary? I still see it's a kind of burden.
All right, I'm gonna.
That's one, Emily.
Last comment. Someone was going to talk. Last comment. Go ahead.
Ken Finnegan, we haven't heard from you.
Well, I guess kind of similar to Emily, I would see it being a little difficult to continue both at the same time, even if it's different namespaces, just because there's going to be confusion over which features are in which version of the spec if they're in two places. I feel like if anything from MicroProfile goes to Jakarta, it needs to be a cut and move. It can't be it's in both places.
I tend to agree. The reason I say that is when we started the config JSR, we still heavily worked on and involved config at a faster pace than we were doing the config JSR. And I don't really feel like the config JSR got real significant attention and probably could have graduated during the time that this spec was there for 2 years before we officially withdrew it. And so
yeah.
you know, we probably could have released the 1.0 in that time, and we didn't, right?
I think this was a really good discussion today. Let's continue it in the Google group on the same thread. The link's in there. If I got cycles, I want to listen to about the last 10 minutes of this because I was trying to take notes and listen, which again is difficult. So I'll see if I can take some notes on it.
So we can have more people put proposals in if they really feel that there are things that are not being discussed. That PR is still not merged. Last time I checked, is it merged?
I haven't.
I'll
be honest. I tend not to do the PRs because I find it too hard to track. It's easier to do it in the Google groups. But that's just me.
Whatever's fine.
Do we have a comment?
I really got to drop, and I super apologize to everybody.
No, we have to go. It's 12:02. Let's end the call. Do we have a call next week?
Yes, we do. I don't know if I'll be on the call or not, but Kevin said he would run the call if I can't make it.
Okay, we will push us over media so we know, and then if someone sends a forum update, we will use that to say to focus on the call.
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Same bad
Bye.
time, same bad channel, 1 week.
But
Thank you. Bye.